As a community developer, we typically think of kind of four kind of key organizing principles, and a lot of these have been touched on already, but it starts with a commitment to place, right? So you have to kind of define a geography, and I compliment the Greater Chatham Initiative for doing this, really focusing on place. I think there's a lot of temptation to want to look at big, broad kind of, societal kind of things, but eventually that gets worked out in place. And so I think that's really key, is to focus on place. The second, and Natalie touched on this, is asset-based. Our communities are full of assets, whether it's transportation, whether it's looking at the available land, access to the lake. In Pullman, we have a wonderful history that we're building off of. But we've got to understand our neighborhoods, our assets. And the media, really doesn't do us justice on this, and we're bombarded with all of these negative images constantly, and we face a very uphill battle when it comes to changing perception about communities. But my simple contention is these communities wouldn't have developed the way they did if there wasn't some advantage, some asset that the communities had, and oftentimes we need to look back and build off of those assets. The third is really the idea that, and this is kind of what's different about community development that a lot of other developers is we tend to concentrate risk. So most developers, they want to spread risk. So you want to you don't want to have too much of a concentration in one area. You don't want to have too many homes or too many businesses and too many investments in one area, and that's just the opposite in community development. We concentrate risk, we double down, we triple down, and we've got to do that if we're going to rebuild our communities. It didn't take 10 years, 15, 20 years to see the decline in these neighborhoods, and it's not going to take 10 years, 15 years. You have to look at this over a much longer kind of time horizon. And I think too often we want those quick, we want those easy, we want those kind of short-term kind of gains. And we've got to deliver progress, but we've got to understand that we've got to be in it for the long haul. And these are in many cases 30, 40-year kind of investments that need to continue and continue and continue time and again. So those are some of the principles. I want to talk about kind of two what I see are kind of opportunities, one kind of on a large scale level and then one on kind of a number of kind of small scale levels. The first is when we're looking at the South Side, I look at the assets and really what is unique about the South Side, in particular the area from about 79th Street all the way down to really the county line, is you have the highest concentration of transportation assets in North America. You have all 5 of the Class A railroads that have facilities in our region. You have 8 major interstates that all intersect in that area. And then finally, you have this access to the Great Lakes via the port and the Mississippi via the canal. And so there are, literally no other place in North America that has that confluence of rail, water, and road that we have in what I would define as more broadly the Calumet region. And so one of the things that we're kind of doubling down on is really focusing on transportation and industrial opportunities. Not only are we blessed with an unbelievable transportation infrastructure, but we have available land. There are literally dozens of 100-plus acre sites on the South Side, many of which were formerly industrial sites that need to be repositioned. But if we're really concerned about economic redevelopment and growth, our priority has got to be around creating those kind of industrial manufacturing jobs that ultimately are going to sustain families, and they're going to provide those kind of workforce opportunities that don't exist today. So that's kind of the big scale kind of stuff, and we need more community developers and other developers focusing on industrial development. The second, and this is more on a smaller scale, but I think is equally important, is we need to focus on small business. And I know that sounds very trite, and it's probably been repeated thousands of times, but we've got to understand our economy is changing, and the gig economy is the largest growing sector of our economy. And so the idea of preparing people for a job or for a particular employment at a company while important and I think necessary, ultimately may prove to be not the best thing for that person. And what I mean by that is we really need to be focusing people on, and particularly young people, on creating entrepreneurship skills and teaching them skills that then they can market and use in the gig economy.